Ladies and gentlemen, subscribe my channel. A quarter in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet hidden inside its history, is one of the most important transitions in American coinage. This is the 1965 Washington quarter, a coin born during a dramatic moment when the United States was running out of silver and the U.S. Mint was changing the metal used for America's everyday coins. And this is where the story gets interesting. Some videos and online claims have suggested astronomical figures, such as $310 million for an extraordinary 1965 quarter, but there is no reliable auction evidence showing a 1965 Washington quarter selling for $310 million. The real secret is not a guaranteed fortune. It is the possibility of a rare mint era created during America's historic change from silver to copper-nickel-clad coinage. So before you spend a 1965 quarter, look closely, because one small detail can completely change its story. The coin shown here is a Washington quarter dated 1965. On the obverse, we see the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left, along with the words Liberty and In God We Trust, and the date 1965 at the bottom. One thing immediately catches the attention of new collectors. There is no mint mark, but don't assume that means the coin is defective. In 1965, the United States Mint intentionally stopped placing mint marks on circulating coins. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced regular 1965 quarters, while the San Francisco facility produced special mint set coins. Because of the temporary suspension of mint marks, a normal 1965 quarter can legitimately have no P, D, or S mint mark. The year 1965 was special because America was changing the way it made its money. Before 1965, Washington quarters were made from 90% silver and 10% copper. But by the middle of the 1960s, rising silver prices and a national coin shortage created enormous pressure on the United States monetary system. The Coinage Act of 1965 authorized the transition to copper-nickel-clad coinage. The new circulating quarters used outer layers of copper and nickel bonded to a pure copper core. Production of the 1965 dated Washington quarter began on August 23, 1965, and continued into 1966. That transition created an unusual opportunity for mint errors. Imagine thousands of blanks, machines, dies, presses, and workers operating during a period when the composition of American coins was changing. Old silver planchets from the previous production could potentially remain in the manufacturing system. If a leftover 90% silver quarter planchet was accidentally struck with a 1965 dated quarter die, the result could be an extremely rare transitional error. This is the coin collector's dream about, not because every 1965 quarter is valuable, but because a genuine 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet is a completely different category of coin. This is the first major secret you should remember. Don't judge a 1965 quarter only by its color. A normal clad quarter can look silver on its surface. The important clue is its weight and edge. A regular 1965 clad quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams. A genuine quarter struck on a leftover 90% silver planchet should weigh approximately 6.25 grams, and its edge should not show the distinctive copper-colored stripe normally visible on a clad coin. That means if you own a 1965 quarter and you're wondering whether you have something unusual, the first smart step is not to polish it, clean it, scratch it, or sell it to the first person who makes a huge promise. Instead, examine the edge and weigh the coin carefully on an accurate digital scale. If it is around 5.67 grams, that strongly points toward a normal clad quarter. If it is around 6.25 grams and the edge appears uniformly silver, that is when the coin deserves serious professional attention. Weight alone is not enough for authentication, but it is an excellent screening tool. And here's another important secret. The 1965 quarter does not need to be silver to be collectible. There are recognized double-die varieties associated with the date. PCGS recognizes two double-die obverse varieties and a double-die reverse variety for 1965 Washington quarters. A double die is created when a die itself receives improperly doubled design details during the die-making process. When that defective die strikes coins, the doubling can appear on letters, numbers, or other design elements. But be careful, because not every coin that appears doubled is valuable. Machine doubling is extremely common and can look impressive to someone seeing it for the first time. Genuine double die varieties require specific diagnostics. This is why serious collectors compare coins with recognized variety references and often use professional attribution and grading services. Now let's return to the coin in your photograph. The obverse appears to show the normal 1965 Washington design, and there is no obvious mint mark, which is completely normal for this year. From this single photograph, however, we cannot determine whether the coin is a rare silver planchet error, a doubled die, or another variety. We would need clear photographs of the reverse, a close-up of the edge, and preferably an accurate weight. The image also does not provide enough evidence to support a $310 million valuation. So where did these enormous numbers come from? The internet is full of dramatic coin stories claiming that an ordinary quarter could be worth hundreds of thousands, millions, or even hundreds of millions of dollars. Those headlines can attract attention, but collectors should separate entertainment from documented numismatic evidence. A coin's value is determined by factors such as authenticity, rarity, error type, condition, certification, provenance, collector demand, and actual market transactions. A theoretical price is not the same thing as a confirmed auction record. For comparison, PCGS reports that ordinary high-grade 1965 Washington quarters can bring substantially more than face value. PCGS notes that collector-grade examples generally begin around MS-65, with gem examples around $30 and superb examples potentially reaching hundreds of dollars or more depending on grade and quality. The really dramatic money belongs to exceptional pieces. Documented examples of 1965 quarters struck on silver planchets have brought thousands of dollars at auction. One reported Heritage Auctions result was $14,687.5 for a 1965 quarter on a silver planchet graded AU58. Another documented example brought $9,300 in 2022. These are real examples of why the 1965 quarter deserves attention, but they are nowhere near $310 million. And that difference is extremely important for anyone making a YouTube video about rare coins. We can tell the exciting story without telling viewers that every 1965 quarter is worth millions. The real story is actually fascinating enough. America was moving away from silver. The mint was under pressure. Mint marks were temporarily removed. New clad planchets replaced the old silver planchets. And during this complicated transition, rare errors could escape into circulation. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in America, a person could have received one of these unusual coins in ordinary change decades ago. Maybe it went into a cash register. Maybe it was placed in a jar. Maybe it sat unnoticed in a drawer for years. And perhaps the owner never realized that its weight and composition were different from an ordinary 1965 quarter. This is why coin collecting is more than looking at old dates. It is detective work. You are looking for evidence. You are comparing designs. You are checking mint marks. You are examining edges. You are measuring weight. You are learning the history behind the coin. And most importantly, you are resisting the temptation to believe every unbelievable price printed in a viral headline. If you have a 1965 quarter at home, turn it over and examine the reverse. Look at the eagle, the inscriptions, the rim, and the overall strike quality. Then examine the edge carefully. A normal clad quarter should reveal the copper core between the outer layers. A suspected silver planchet example can have a different appearance around the edge. Next, weigh it accurately. Never rely on color alone. If the coin appears to match the characteristics of a possible transitional error, don't clean it. Cleaning can damage the surface and potentially reduce collector value. Keep the coin safely stored and consider having a suspected major error examined by a reputable professional grading or authentication service, such as PCGS or another established third-party grading company. And remember something else. Condition matters enormously. Two coins of the same date and variety can have completely different values depending on their grade. A heavily circulated coin with scratches and contact marks is not comparable to a sharply struck, beautifully preserved mint-state specimen. Collectors pay premiums for exceptional preservation because high-grade survivors from older production runs are much harder to find. The 1965 Washington quarter is therefore one of the most interesting modern American quarters to search, not because every example is rare, and certainly not because every example is worth $310 million, but because the year represents a major turning point in United States coinage. It is the bridge between America's traditional silver quarter and the modern clad quarter that Americans would use for generations. So the next time someone hands you a 1965 Washington quarter, don't automatically throw it into your spending pile. Take a second look, check the date. Remember that the absence of a mint mark is normal. Inspect the edge, weigh the coin, search for recognized double die characteristics, and if something doesn't look right, get a professional opinion before making any decision. The coin in today's story may look like an ordinary 25-cent piece, but its history is anything but ordinary. It was produced during one of the biggest changes in American coinage, and rare errors from that transition have become important pieces of numismatic history. The dream of finding a fortune in pocket change is exciting, but the real secret is knowing how to separate a normal coin from a genuinely rare one. So if you have a 1965 Washington quarter sitting in a drawer, a jar, an old collection, or even your pocket, take it out and inspect it. You might not have a $310 million coin, and there is no documented evidence supporting that figure, but you could still have an unusual error or a high-grade collectible worth far more than its 25-cent face value. In the world of coin collecting, the smallest details can sometimes tell the biggest stories. And that's what makes the 1965 Washington quarter so fascinating. It isn't simply a piece of pocket change. It is a snapshot of America at the exact moment the nation changed the metal inside its money. One year, one date, one quarter, and potentially one extraordinary mint mistake that collectors are still searching for today. If you enjoyed this coin story, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next valuable coin could be hiding in an ordinary collection, waiting for someone to notice the detail that everyone else missed. What if a $1 coin sitting unnoticed in an old collection could turn out to be something far more interesting than ordinary pocket change? Today, we are looking at the 2000D Sacagawea Dollar, one of the most recognizable new American dollar coins ever produced. You may have seen headlines claiming that a 2000D Sacagawea Dollar could be worth $7 million, but before you start searching every drawer in your house, there is an important truth you need to know. There is no reliable documented auction record showing a normal 2000D Sacagawea Dollar selling for $7 million. The real story is much more fascinating. The 2000D dollar belongs to the first year of the Sacagawea series, and certain special issues, varieties, errors, and extraordinary grades can be worth far more than face value. So today, we're going to uncover exactly what makes a 2000D Sacagawea Dollar interesting, what you should look for, and why this little $1 coin became such an important part of modern American numismatic history. The coin we're talking about is the Sacagawea Dollar dated 2000 with a small D mint mark, indicating production at the Denver Mint. On the obverse is Sacagawea, the Shoshone woman who accompanied the Lewis and Clark expedition, carrying her infant son, Jean-Baptiste. The design was created by sculptor Glenna Goodacre. On the reverse, the coin originally featured an eagle in flight surrounded by stars, with the design by U.S. Mint sculptor-engraver Thomas D. Rogers, S.R. The coin has a golden appearance, but that gold color does not mean it is made of gold. The Sacagawea Dollar is made from a copper-based clad composition, not precious metal gold. The year 2000 was a major moment for the United States Mint. America was entering a new century, and the Mint wanted a new dollar coin that would be distinctive, modern, and easier to use. The Sacagawea Dollar was introduced as a replacement for the Susan B. Anthony dollar, which had struggled with public acceptance partly because its size and appearance were too similar to the quarter. The 2000D Sacagawea dollar was produced in very large numbers. According to Numismaster's data, the Denver Mint struck approximately 518,916,000 regular 2000D Sacagawea dollars. That means the ordinary 2000D is not an extremely rare coin simply because it has the 2000 date and a D mint mark. So why do collectors still pay attention to it? Because the first year of a coin series can contain unusual varieties, special finishes, and mint eras. And the Sacagawea dollar's first year has several famous stories. One of the most famous is the so-called Cheerios dollar. Before the Sacagawea dollar entered widespread circulation, General Mills partnered with the US Mint to promote the new coin. Thousands of specially packaged 2000-dated Sacagawea dollars were placed inside Cheerios cereal boxes. PCGS reports that 5,500 specially packaged Sacagawea dollars were distributed among approximately 10 million boxes of Cheerios. Years later, collectors discovered that some of these coins had a different reverse design, especially enhanced tail feathers on the eagle. PCGS refers to the variety as the Cheerios FS401, and some experts have considered these coins pattern-like pieces or a reverse of 1999. But there is an important detail here. The famous Cheerios dollar is associated with the 2000p issue, not the ordinary 2000D circulation coin. So if you find a regular 2000D Sacagawea dollar, don't automatically call it a Cheerios dollar. The mint mark matters. Another famous first-year variety is the Wounded Eagle. This is also primarily associated with 2000p Sacagawea dollars. The variety gets its nickname because an extra line or die feature appears across the eagle's breast, giving the appearance of a wound. PCGS lists the 2000p Wounded Eagle as a recognized variety and currently gives it substantially higher values than a normal 2000p coin at many grades. Again, the important lesson is simple. Don't confuse every unusual-looking Sacagawea dollar with a rare variety. A coin can have scratches, dents, machine doubling, discoloration, or contact marks that have nothing to do with a valuable mint era. Now let's come back to the 2000D. There is a special 2000D issue that collectors should know about, the Millennium Set Sacagawea Dollar. The US Mint included a Sacagawea dollar in its special Millennium Set, and those coins received special preparation that produced a proof-like appearance. NGC explains that the Millennium Set had a limited production and that many of the 2000D dollars from these sets received PL or proof-like designations. A 2000D Millennium Set coin graded NGC MS68PL realized $228 at Heritage Auctions in February 2022. That is a perfect example of how condition and origin can change the value of a coin. A regular circulated 2000D dollar may be worth only slightly more than $1, while a special high-grade example with documented Millennium Set provenance can be worth substantially more. PCGS's current price guide also separates the ordinary 2000D from the Millennium Set issue. Its listed values for the regular 2000D increased dramatically with exceptional grades, while the Millennium Set designation has its own price range. And this is where online headlines can become confusing. You may hear someone say, this 2000D Sacagawea dollar is worth $7 million. That sounds incredible, and it certainly makes a powerful video title. But a professional coin collector should immediately ask one question: where is the documented sale? For a coin to genuinely be worth millions of dollars, we would expect strong evidence from a recognized auction house, a professional grading service, documented provenance, or another reliable numismatic source. At the time of this research, the available NGC auction data shows the highest reported Sacagawea dollar auction prices are associated with extremely unusual 2000p eras and varieties, not a normal 2000D Sacagawea dollar. NGC lists a 2000p Sacagawea dollar with a Washington quarter obverse mule era at $102,000, while other major varieties and eras have also reached tens of thousands of dollars. That tells us something important. Rare Sacagawea dollars really can be extremely valuable, but the $7 million claim should not be presented as an established value for the normal 2000D. Now imagine you are holding a 2000D Sacagawea dollar in your hand. What should you do? First, look at the date. It should say 2000. Next, find the D mint mark. It is located on the obverse near the date area. The D tells you that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. Then examine the overall condition. Is the coin heavily circulated, scratched, or worn, or does it still have sharp details, bright surfaces, and an almost untouched appearance? Condition is one of the biggest factors in determining collectible value. Look closely at Sacagawea's portrait. Examine the lettering, date, rim, and other design elements under good lighting. Then turn the coin over and study the eagle. Look for unusual design characteristics, but don't assume that a scratch or random mark is a valuable error. Next, inspect the edge. The Sacagawea dollar has a distinctive smooth edge, and later issues have edge lettering, but the 2000 coin is particularly interesting because its edge treatment differs from later edge-lettered Sacagawea dollars. Don't mistake damage or post-mint markings for an official mint error. Another important rule is never to clean the coin. If you think you have a rare error, cleaning it can damage the original surface and reduce its desirability to collectors. Leave the coin exactly as you found it. And if you believe your 2000D is genuinely unusual, consider professional authentication. A major grading service can determine whether the coin is an ordinary circulation strike, a special issue, or an authenticated mint error. This is especially important when someone claims that a coin is worth thousands or millions of dollars. The fascinating thing about the 2000D Sacagawea dollar is that it represents the beginning of a new chapter in American coinage. It was introduced at the dawn of a new millennium, carried a completely new portrait, featured a golden-colored appearance, and attempted to revive the idea of the circulating dollar coin. And although the ordinary 2000D is not a $7 million coin, the series contains genuine rarities that have achieved remarkable prices. NGC's auction records show that exceptional Sacagawea varieties and errors have reached 5- and even 6-figure prices. That is why you should never judge a coin solely by its face value. $1 may be printed on a banknote, $1 may appear on a coin, but the collector value can be completely different when rarity, condition, and a genuine mint error enter the picture. So if you have a 2000D Sacagawea dollar, don't throw it away and don't assume that it is automatically worth a fortune. Instead, inspect it carefully. Check the mint mark, check the condition, look for recognized varieties, compare it with authenticated examples, and if something appears genuinely unusual, have it professionally evaluated. The biggest secret about rare coins is not that every old coin is worth millions. The real secret is that a tiny number of coins can contain a mistake or characteristic that makes them dramatically more desirable to collectors. That is the story behind the 2000D Sacagawea dollar. A coin that began as a simple $1 piece became part of one of the most interesting modern American coin series. It reminds us that sometimes the difference between ordinary and extraordinary can be hidden in something as small as a mint mark, a die variety, a special finish, or a manufacturing error. So before you spend your next Sacagawea dollar, take a closer look. Maybe it is simply worth $1. Maybe it is a high-grade collectible. Maybe it belongs to a special issue. Or if you discover a genuine and authenticated mint error, you may have something far more interesting. But remember, the $7 million figure should be treated as an internet claim, not as a confirmed market value for a normal 2000D Sacagawea dollar. The real documented market tells a more believable and still exciting story. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 2000D Sacagawea dollar, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. because the next rare coin could be hiding in an old jar, a forgotten collection, or even in ordinary change, and the only way to recognize it is to know exactly what you're looking for. Imagine finding a tiny 1-cent coin in an old jar, a forgotten collection, or a box of coins that has been sitting untouched for decades. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than an ordinary old penny. But then you notice the date, 1950. You turn it over and see the famous wheat ears on the reverse. Suddenly, you start wondering, could this little piece of American history actually be worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of dollars? Today, we're taking a deep look at the 1950 Lincoln wheat penny, one of the classic American 1-cent coins that collectors still search for today. And you may have heard an incredible claim that a 1950 penny could be worth $15 million. But before you believe that headline, there is an important truth. There is no reliable documented auction record showing an ordinary 1950 Lincoln wheat penny selling for $15 million. The real story is about condition, mint marks, varieties, errors, and extraordinary high-grade examples, and that story is fascinating enough on its own. The 1950 Lincoln wheat cent was part of the famous wheat penny series that began in 1909 and continued until 1958. The coin features Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's portrait had already become one of the most recognizable images in American coinage, and on the reverse were two wheat ears surrounding the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin motto E Pluribus Unum above. Those wheat ears are the reason collectors call these coins wheat pennies. The 1950 penny was produced during a very different America. The country was entering the post-World War II era, and American industry was expanding rapidly. Families were buying new products, cities were growing, and millions of Lincoln cents were being used every day in stores, gas stations, vending machines, and cash registers. Most people who handled these pennies had no idea that decades later collectors would study their smallest details. There were three major mint varieties of the 1950 Lincoln cent: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia coins carry no mint mark. Denver coins carry a small d, and San Francisco coins carry an S according to NGC. The 1950 D Lincoln cent had a mintage of approximately 334,950,000 coins, making it far from rare simply because it is a 1950 D. The coin is made from bronze, weighs approximately 3.11 grams, and has a diameter of about 19 millimeters. So if you find a 1950 D penny, don't immediately assume you have a fortune. The date alone doesn't make it extremely rare. What matters is what else the coin has. One of the biggest factors is condition. A 1950 penny that has spent decades circulating may have scratches, discoloration, worn lettering, and flattened details. Such a coin can have only a modest collector premium. But a 1950 penny that survived in extraordinary condition, with strong original luster, sharp details, and attractive red color, can be much more desirable. This is where professional grading becomes important. Collectors use grades such as good, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, and mint state. At the highest levels, even a tiny difference in preservation can make a significant difference in price. The color designation can matter too. Lincoln cents are commonly categorized as brown, red-brown, or red. A fully original red Lincoln cent that has retained its original copper color can be significantly more desirable than a brown example at the same numerical grade. And now we come to the most exciting part of the 1950 D story. Professional auction records prove that exceptional examples can bring serious money. PCGS reports an auction record of $20,400 for a 1950 D Lincoln cent graded MS68RD, sold by Heritage Auctions on January 19, 2025. That is a real documented transaction, and it demonstrates just how dramatically value can rise when an old coin is preserved at an extraordinary level. Notice the difference. We are not talking about millions of dollars. We are talking about a documented $20,400 auction result for an exceptionally graded example. This is exactly why serious collectors don't judge a coin from a viral headline alone. They look for certification, grade, auction history, and verifiable evidence. NGC's information also shows why the 1950D can become more interesting at higher grades. Its census records show certified examples reaching MS-67, while the majority of ordinary examples are much less valuable. Now imagine you discover a 1950D penny that looks almost untouched. The fields are bright. Lincoln's hair has strong detail. The wheat ears on the reverse are sharply defined. There are very few marks. The original red color is still present. That's when you should slow down and investigate. Don't clean the coin. This is extremely important. Never polish an old Lincoln cent simply because you think making it shiny will increase its value. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and may make the coin less desirable to collectors. A naturally preserved original surface is usually much more important than artificial shine. Instead, place the coin somewhere safe and examine it under good lighting. Look at the date first. Confirm that it really says 1950. Then look below the date. Is there a D, an S, or no mint mark? If you see a D, you have a 1950D Denver mint cent. If you see an S, you have a 1950S San Francisco cent. If there is no mint mark, it was produced at Philadelphia. Next, examine Lincoln's portrait. Look for unusual doubling in the lettering and date, but be careful. Not every apparent doubling is a valuable double-die variety. Machine doubling and damage can create similar-looking effects. Then turn the coin over. Study the wheat ears. Look at 1 cent. Examine United States of America. Check EPLURBUS UNUM. Look around the rim for unusual breaks, cracks, missing metal, or other genuine mint-made abnormalities. The 1950D issue is also known for certain repunched mint-mark varieties and die breaks. NGC notes that several repunched mint-mark varieties are known, although they are not considered dramatic rarities, and it also notes that cud die breaks occur with this issue. This is another important lesson for anyone searching old pennies. A genuine mint error can be interesting, but not every error automatically makes a coin worth thousands of dollars. The exact variety, rarity, condition, and collector demand all matter. Now let's talk about the $15 million claim. A headline saying 1950 penny worth $15 million may sound exciting, but a professional numismatist would immediately ask, where was it sold? Which auction house? What grade? What certification number? What variety? What was the actual hammer price? Without that evidence, $15 million should be treated as an unverified internet claim, not as the established market value of a 1950 penny. And that's actually good news for collectors, because you don't need a $15 million fantasy to make this coin interesting. A documented $20,400 sale is already a remarkable story. Think about what that means. A coin originally worth 1 cent could eventually sell for tens of thousands of dollars because it survived in an extraordinary state of preservation. That is the real magic of coin collecting. The value isn't created simply because the coin is old. It is created by a combination of age, scarcity, condition, variety, demand, and history. Millions of people could have handled these pennies in 1950. They were used for everyday purchases. Some were lost, some were destroyed, some were thrown away, some were placed into jars, and a tiny number survived in exceptional condition. Those survivors are what collectors want. This is why searching old coin collections can be so interesting. You are not simply looking for an old date. You are looking for the unusual survivor. Maybe your 1950 penny has an exceptional strike. Maybe it has beautiful, original red color. Maybe it has a recognized variety. Maybe it has an unusual mint-made error. Or maybe it is simply a well-preserved example of an important American coin. All of these possibilities make the search worthwhile. And there is another reason the 1950 wheat penny remains popular. It belongs to the final decade of the classic wheat reverse Lincoln cent. By 1958, the wheat reverse design would disappear, and in 1959, the United States Mint introduced the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. That means the 1950 penny sits near the end of a design era that lasted half a century. Imagine holding one today. You are holding a coin that circulated in an America that looked completely different from the country we know now. The coin passed through hands during the early 1950s, through the Cold War era, through decades of economic change, and eventually into the collections of people who recognized its historical importance. That is what makes an old coin more than just money. It becomes a piece of history. So if you have a 1950 Lincoln wheat penny, don't immediately assume it is worth $15 million. Instead, become a detective. Check the mint mark. Check the condition. Check the color. Check for genuine varieties. Check for legitimate mint errors. And if the coin looks exceptionally preserved or unusual, consider having it examined by a reputable professional grading service. Remember, the most valuable coin is not always the oldest coin. Sometimes it is the coin that survived in the best condition. Sometimes it is a rare variety. Sometimes it is a genuine mint error. And sometimes the most important discovery is simply learning what you actually have. The 1950 Lincoln wheat penny is a perfect example. Most examples are not fortunes, but exceptional examples can be surprisingly valuable. And documented auction history proves that at least some 1950 cents have reached five-figure prices. PCGS records the $20,400 MS68 RD result, while NGC's current information shows that ordinary 1950 cents can be worth modest amounts at lower grades and substantially more at the highest certified levels. So the next time you see an old penny, don't throw it into the spending pile without looking. Turn it over. Read the date. Find the mint mark. Study the surfaces. And remember, the difference between an ordinary old penny and an extraordinary collectible can sometimes be hidden in a detail smaller than a grain of sand. Could your 1950 wheat penny be worth $15 million? There is no reliable evidence supporting that figure for a normal 1950 Lincoln cent. But could a rare, exceptional 1950 penny be worth far more than 1 cent? Absolutely. And that is the real secret. The treasure isn't in the headline. The treasure is in learning what to look for. If you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind America's old coins, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep checking your change, old collections, jars, and inherited coin boxes. Because somewhere out there, another forgotten Lincoln wheat penny may be waiting for someone to recognize exactly what makes it special.